Today we are joined by not one, but two of the incredible people who work at Wedgwood's Autism Center for Child Development, Jen and Keili. Thank you both so much for being here.
You are welcome.
All right, so you work at Wedgwood's Autism Center for Child Development, or we often call it the ACCD. Mm-hmm. What do you do there, and how long have you been a part of the team?
So I'm Keili Scott. I have been at the ACCD for 5.5 years now, so a long time. And my position is the clinical supervisor of after school and early intensive behavioral intervention, so EIBI, as I'll probably use throughout the rest of the conversation. And then essentially what I do in my position is I help oversee the BCBAs with Dr. Lake, and just to ensure that all the clinical tasks are getting completed that need to be done for our clients. So
great.
I'm Jen Ruffin. I am the clinical supervisor of training and transition programs. I oversee the training of all staff and then our additional programs. So our after school stuff, our expansion, I kind of help Dr. Lake with all that. I've been here 7 years, a little over 7 years.
Great.
Yes.
You guys have a lot to do.
I said I know. So yes, definitely.
So can you give us an overview of what happens at Wedgwood's Autism Center?
Yeah, so essentially what the service we're providing is ABA therapy for clients between the ages of 18 months and 12 years. And so that is individualized therapy, and it's one-to-one with our behavior technicians.
Yeah, we work on, anything from daily living skills, communication. Communication's a big one, and then social skills, obviously. And it's just a fun day filled with lots of activity, lots of moving, and lots of therapy.
Yeah, and across both programs, we do a lot of collaboration and really focus on skills to kind of help our clients be more successful, like out in the community settings, lesser restrictive settings. So we collaborate with like doctors, dentists, school teachers a lot.
Speech, OT.
Yeah.
Yeah, the little kids get well-rounded.
To try to just help kind of ease those transitions into those other settings, just because sometimes the skills going into those settings are a little more challenging for our clients. And so we just want to make it a little bit easier for them to go into all of those different areas.
Great. So you touched on this a little bit. So you're working on things like communication and social skills. What do treatment goals in those areas look like, and how do you work with kids to accomplish those sorts of goals?
Go ahead, Keili.
Yeah. So as far as communication, the programming for communication, is going to look different for each client and depending on their age, their skill level. So essentially our BCBAs go in and they do assessments to check out where the kiddos are at as far as the skill level for communication and social skills. And then they'll develop programming based on that assessment and make sure that treatment is individualized per each client. And so depending on where the client's at really makes a difference in what type of program they're working on specifically.
So when we're talking about working towards communication skills, is that always like learning how to speak, or are there other things that you're working on too?
So we're really looking at both expressive and receptive language. Okay. So essentially that could come in the form of vocal communication. It could be our clients using picture exchange, so PECs, using speech devices, so speech generative devices, sign language. So we kind of really try to navigate where the client is going with their communication and see what's going to work best for them. Because we may start out with one mode of communication and trying to use that, and it may not be successful. So we're really trying to follow where the client goes with trying to communicate with us and their families and people out in the community. So, yeah.
It's great. So why are the services that you and your team at the ACCD provide so important?
Oh, man. Because I think a big part is that the kids come out, they're, born, they come into the world, and then their skills that they learn along the way are just a little different than some of the other kids. might have or might see. And then their families, of course, if they've never had experience with that, then it's just a huge thing. And they have to find ways to get help. And early intervention and things like that, it's more well known now, but it's still something a parent has to find a place, get testing, get diagnosed, get into a center, and kind of get to this whole point where then the kid can start therapy. So then they're like 2, and then they kind of get in and they get all the skills they need until they're ready to leave, or they transition to school. And basically they have 2 paths: if they get therapy or if they don't have therapy. And when they get therapy, research has shown that they have better outcomes moving forward. And we all know when kids go into school, it's a lot harder because they're in a big classroom, they're not one-to-one, they're surrounded by peers, and they might already be behind. And then you have to learn all the skills you have to learn in school, and there are a lot now. Kindergarten is totally different than it was back then because my son's in kindergarten, so I know what they're going into. And so, us being able to provide that therapy for them in the community can only help, basically.
Help them be more successful and more comfortable, I think, is just a big thing for our kiddos. It is their difference in their behaviors. Is something that we're constantly analyzing and looking at and making sure they really are truly comfortable and demonstrating these positive behaviors going out into those different settings. So
yeah, and I can imagine if communication is one of the main things that you're working with a lot of kids, if they're having trouble communicating just with their families, I can't imagine how hard learning would then be in school if they can't communicate. So getting that skill taught before they go to school really makes an impact in their education, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely. How parents understand more than the community, so they might think and hear things, and then they transition and they're with us, or they go to school and they're like, no, we have no idea what they're saying. So then you get a real picture. And then, it makes a huge difference, because if you can't communicate, then there's a lot of other behaviors that might sometimes follow that also cause problems along the way. So it really helps get everyone prepared.
Yeah, sets them on the road for success.
Yes.
So you mentioned in your title, you work in an after-school program, which is something that we've recently launched, which is super exciting. How is this different from our other services at the Autism Center, and why are they so needed right now?
So as far as for the after-school program, we'll go back to our early intervention first. So in our early intervention, we're seeing clients from that 18 months to 6 years. And then the after-school program is really focused on those clients who are already attending school. And then, so it's going to be that age group of that 6 to 12. And so the reasoning for why this is so important, there are so many kiddos in need of after-school services or more like focus-based services, so a lower level where they can be in school and ABA therapy at the same time. And sometimes, that can be challenging with hours and all of that. But basically, when kiddos move out of our EI-BI program, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't need services after age 6. And so essentially we're working on similar programs, just because they're going in that age 6, but a lot to make them and help them be more successful in that school setting, and still continuing to work on those goals and objectives out in the community too, and focusing on safety, again, continuing communication. Social skills might look a little bit different, just because now hopefully we can kind of go in the school and start helping in the school too, and collaborating with the teacher on those social skills in that setting too, not just in our center-based setting. And then also working a lot with the families still in the after-school program. So again, continuing to have parent meetings. But overall, I feel like one of the big things, and Jen can say more about this as far as the development of the program, was just because there's a need for that area. There are a lot of early intervention centers, but not a lot of center-based services as far as for after school.
Yeah, it's hard. And it's hard to it's just a hard time frame, because parents, it's dinner time. You pick your kid up. Your kid goes half day therapy, half day school, and so that can get tricky. But yeah, we've been trying for a long time, a few years, to really bridged the gap. Dr. Lake always says it, and I said it to her, between the early intervention and then school, so that there's not a like hard cutoff sometimes for our kids. Sometimes it's like, okay, you've been with us for 4 years, now you're 6 and you have to go to school, and we can do a slow transition, but it's still going to be, you're fading really quickly and then you're off to school and there's just nothing there. Or they might do that and want therapy, but they have to be on like a 6-month wait list for an in-home service. There's just a lot of kids that need that between the ages of 6 and honestly 6 and like 18.
Yeah.
Or all the way up to I think 21, 24, whatever it is now. So we've always wanted to bridge that gap so that the kids that are in our center already have somewhere to go. We don't cut them off because we work so hard, and we have 2 awesome after school BCBAs actually now. So that's really exciting. And then we also wanted to offer that to families that called their own referrals to say, hey, we do see kids that age, because we get a lot of calls about that too. So just making it well-rounded and a well-rounded program for us is really important. So
well, and that transition to school, I imagine, especially for this this group of kids, is pretty tricky. And so to have some additional supports as they're getting used to school and learning how they need to learn is really important. And I love that you guys provide support for the families too. I think that's so cool and probably so important too for the overall success of the therapy.
Yeah, and when families come in and they don't know and they're unsure, and then they go through therapy with you for, like I said, like 4 years, and then they have to go to school, it's really hard sometimes. So when they have us there still to kind of consult and know what their kid has been through, that makes them very calm. And then in school, I mean, it varies. You might have a kid go into school and get supports. You might have kids that go into specific classrooms, or you might have kids that go in and they don't meet requirements for any supports, but we know they're still in need of therapy. And, just because they might be really quiet and sit there and the teacher's like, they're so great. It's like, yes, but they are not social at all, but it's hard to see. So helping them go into it gives us a little more time. So I love it. It's working so far.
So great.
We're good.
Yeah,
we started.
really
We're on our way.
So what sort of impact are you seeing on kids and their families as they participate in services at ACCD, especially in this new after-school program?
I would say one of the big things, just across both programs to start, you just see a change in kind of the family's overall behavior too. Families come in and, like Jen said, the process of just getting into services can be really stressful and difficult for families. And we've had a lot of families that mention that. And then when they get into services, they don't know what to anticipate, especially if they have no background in ABA and the therapy and all of that. And so I think just over time, getting to know what ABA therapy is, getting to see, these changes in behaviors with their kiddos, and then this increase in skills and, this decrease in more challenging behavior that's kind of created barriers to be in these lesser restrictive settings. I think just overall that level of kind of like happiness or like stress level definitely changes. And that is one thing we actually kind of look at, and something we ask our families to fill out is a parenting stress index to try to help measure that and see if we're successful in helping the family as well as, our client directly. So that's something that's super important to us, and we want to keep doing and making sure that, you're seeing those challenges change across the families. And so that goes right into the after school program too. Same thing, we're still using those same assessments to help measure that and check in with families. And I think it really does help, like Jen said, with school, that transition. Because I know just previously when I had like full caseload and everything before this position, that was something that parents mentioned to me a lot, was that going into school, transitioning to a new provider on top of it was really difficult for them, just because you're transitioning to 2 different people, new settings, and it was also a challenge for the kiddo too, to have those transitions. And so I think overall, we definitely do see a huge impact on the entire family and our kiddos when we're providing this therapy.
So. No, I was going to say the same thing. and the confidence.
Yeah.
The confidence in families to advocate for their kid, and confidence in, okay, my kid will have a job one day and will have friends. So the confidence in them and the confidence in the kids. Because any kid, whether they're in after school or the early intervention, if they come in, like you said, without communication skills, they're very limited. And then you help them learn those skills. You just start to see their interests, what makes them happy. You kind of start to see them being able to live who they are. And so that confidence, that one's fun. Yeah.
That's really awesome.
I know.
And kids start advocating for themselves, which is so cool.
Yeah.
And then kind of those, big success stories going out into the community, I think are the day-to-day ones that, you hear a lot from the family is like, my kid slept in their room. And then, going into the dentist, they sat through a whole procedure. This is, so cool. They walked into a doctor's office, and it's just kind of those things where, and you see a difference in the kiddo's behavior, which is really awesome, where it's like, I'm cool with walking into the doctor's office and I can do this. I can sit in this dentist chair and, tolerate having these different tools in my mouth. Jen hit on it perfectly. I think that's all around that confidence and success with the clients is cool. Super awesome.
That was fun.
How do you see God moving at Wedgwood and at the Autism Center?
I would say, definitely across, the success we do have with our clients, and I would say just in kind of the overall energy at the center. When you walk in and we do tours for families, it's just our staff are happy to be there and they love what they do. They love what they do with our clients. And I think that makes a huge difference in treatment because they're having fun and the kids are having fun. And, families get to see that. Others who come in our center and do interviews, to be staff get to see that. And so I think, God's presence is definitely there and kind of helping us provide best treatment. And you see that just through our actions in the whole center. So,
yeah, same.
Yeah.
I was talking to staff the other day and they were tired, because we all get tired.
Yeah.
It's end of winter time. And they were talking, like, but I still love it. I still love working with this kid. It's so fun. And I think that's a great example because families come in and they see that love and they see that support and they see that we enjoy being with their kid. And they're just like, thank God somebody likes my kid. I'm like, yes, why wouldn't we like your kid? But they've had experiences, and they feel that pressure and they feel out in the world at the grocery store. If their kid wants a candy bar and doesn't, it might be a little extreme response. And, people stare and all of that stuff. So when they just say, somebody likes my kid, and there you go. So we can make families feel that way, and we can make the kids feel that way, that they are loved and special. I don't know. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Right there.
That's awesome. So April is Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. What does our community need to know about autism, Wedgwood, and the work that you and your team do?
I think one thing, and Jen just kind of mentioned this, is just kind of awareness in the community that, there are people of different disabilities, and it may not be evident, when somebody does have a disability or, has autism specifically. And so just make sure you're compassionate in those situations when you do see any people out in the community that are having challenges with their own child. Because that's a big thing that parents mention to us and can be really hard for them. So offer a hand, be supportive and helpful, but not judgmental in those situations. So I think that's a big thing, just kind of community-based. And then as far as for just knowing about our services, know we're here to get in contact with, and we love what we do here at Wedgwood and the ACCD, and we want to provide best treatment and, really individualized programming and services. And we really look for that in our staff too when we're doing hiring and bringing people in. So,
yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah. I mean,
Good job, Keili.
and thinking when you were talking about the kid, a success like walking into a doctor's office on their own, like to someone who is also walking into the doctor's office, it would not look like any big thing. So you just never know what is a success and what is a normal day for someone.
No, and you don't know how nervous that parent might be because they were told, try it this one time because we think they're ready, and you don't know how nervous they are. And you don't know how many times they've probably tried, or that they go in and then they leave and they cry because they're like, we did it. And so it can be really challenging, especially doctor stuff, because if your kid has any injury or like a stomachache, toothache, anything like that, and you can't help them, and then they can't also have trouble going into the doctor, that's stressful. Parents sleeping through the night is nice. So that's a big one. You don't know how tired these families are. You don't know how many times they've tried to go to the Children's Museum with their family and all the siblings together, and how that's gone. And so when they walk in for the first time and they actually can be there as a family or go on vacations. So just be aware, be helpful,
give a lot of grace,
and give grace, and see a child for a child.
And if I'm remembering correctly, talking about getting connected to services, the team at the Autism Center will help families kind of start that process and direct them to how they can get testing and kind of lay out what the process looks like. Correct?
Yeah, we have.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we have awesome department coordinator, department assistant. That's probably not her accurate title. She's
fantastic.
She's going to say that later.
Either way, she's saying yes.
Any of our BCBAs, they will help tell families where to go for testing, how to get started. They will talk to them as long as they need. We had someone recently come in, Jeanette, and Keili can talk more about it, but she did some research and got surveys and did all these things on what families need for supports. And so she finished that, and that gave us a lot of resources. That's not just for ABA, right? Hers was
it's just additional supports to kind of help families with children with autism. So different community supports, so different aspects like financially, looking at dentist's office, doctor's office, going out to like fun activities. So different activities
like
in the community.
Movie nights, and they have like sensory, they have a lot of stuff out there that you wouldn't know about.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Transportation, diapers, all kinds of stuff that she put together for us. So now we can bring that to our families, and
that's great.
It's really cool.
Yeah, so we help them.
I'll be sure to put the contact information for the Autism Center in the episode description. So if people have questions about, basically, it sounds like anything autism related, you guys should be able to set them in the right direction.
Or we'll send them somewhere.
Yeah,
they can
that's so great.
Help. And if they don't, we just say, call us back. and then we'll make sure. We'll find somewhere else. So yes, definitely do that.
It sounds like it's kind of already a daunting process when you have a child with autism. So I'm glad that Wedgwood is able to help families regardless of if they're in our services or not.
Yeah, it definitely can be. There's lots of long wait lists and long, because there's so many other steps. So definitely daunting. And if they hear a friendly voice along the way, a lot of them really appreciate it. So.
Yeah, and I can confirm the Wedgwood Autism Center team is some of the nicest people I've ever met, and the center is maybe the funnest place on all of campus.
I said, we try. we try our best. But
well, Keili and Jen, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about the impactful, important work that you do. It was a pleasure to chat with both of you.
Thanks.